We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and congratulations to England and Wales on their start to the World Cup, and good luck for the rest of the tournament. Mr Speaker, the World Cup doesn't belong to FIFA, and it doesn't belong to the host nation. It belongs to everyone who loves football. It's totally unacceptable that during this tournament, gay football fans are unable to acknowledge who they love, and players have been threatened with suspension if they show solidarity with those fans. Shame on FIFA. Britain faces the lowest growth of any OECD nation over the next 2 years. Why?
Mr Speaker, this country has experienced since 2010 the third highest growth in the G7. This year, the fastest growth in the G7, and unemployment at a multi-decade low. We're getting on to deliver more growth, Mr Speaker. We're delivering free ports. We're investing in apprenticeships. We're protecting R&D. And if the Labour Party is serious about actually supporting growth, maybe they should get on the phone with their union paymasters and tell them to call off the strikes.
Mr Speaker,
Order. We want to get through Prime Minister's questions, and you're not helping me. Keir Starmer.
He's in total denial. We're bottom of the 38 OECD countries who are all in the same boat when it comes to COVID and Ukraine. And he wants a pat on the back. It's like a football manager, bottom of the league at Christmas, celebrating an away draw 3 months ago, and it won't wash. So they don't like their record, that's the problem. So let's try it another way. Why is Britain set to be the first country into recession and the last country out?
Mr Speaker, I'm pleased that the Right Honourable Gentleman brought up the OECD report, because it contained actually 3 very important points. Firstly, it made the point that actually in the years following the pandemic, we're projected to have almost the highest growth amongst our peer countries. It also made the point, it was crystal clear that the challenges we face are completely international in nature. And thirdly, Mr Speaker, it supported our fiscal plan because it's credible and ensures sustainability. Now, the Right Honourable Gentleman would have known all of that if he actually read the whole report. But he's not interested in substance. He's an opportunist, Mr Speaker. In 4 weeks, Mr Speaker, in 4 weeks, I've strengthened the economy. We've put more money into the NHS and schools. We've delivered a deal to tackle illegal migration. In the same 4 weeks, all we've...
Prime Minister, when I stand, you've got to sit down. But can I just say to you, you came to me quite rightly and said to me, we want to get through Prime Minister's questions. I'm going to give short answers. Please stick to what you have.
Mr Speaker, there's only one party that's crashed the economy, and they're sitting there. And I noticed this, Mr Speaker. I noticed this. He won't say why Britain is set to be the first into a recession and the last out. So I will. 12 years of Tory failure, followed by 12 weeks of Tory chaos. For a decade, they've let our economy drift aimlessly before suddenly cutting the parachute ropes and slamming it to the ground. And because of the changes he's made, a typical household will end up with tax increases of £1,400. They don't want to hear about these tax increases of £1,400. Contrast that to a super wealthy non-dom living here but holding their income overseas. How much more...
Order. Mr Young, I don't need any more. I don't need shouting, don't need pointing. You're meant to be a good example when you sit on this front bench. Because you're the second, don't spoil what you're meant to do.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think they want to hear this. Because of the changes he's made, a typical household will end up paying tax increases of £1,400. Contrast that to a super wealthy non-dom living here but holding their income overseas. How much more has he asked them to pay?
Just order. As I said to the Prime Minister, I said to the Leader of the Opposition, I'm going to get through this list. I need you both to help me and think of other members. Come on.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Labour had 13 years to address this issue and did nothing. Nothing. It was the Conservative government that took action and tightened the rules. But the problem with his idea is that it would end up costing Britain money. Not my words, the words of the former Labour Shadow Chancellor. But rather than peddling fairy tales and gesture politics, let's actually tell him what we're doing to deliver for this country. A record increase in the national living wage, protecting millions from energy bills, protecting the pensioners' triple lock. That's what we're doing for this country.
Mr. Speaker, if they'd grown the economy at the same rate as the last Labour government, we'd have tens of billions of pounds more to spend on that. Mr. Speaker, it wasn't a trick question. The answer is he's not asked non-doms to pay a penny more. Every year, he talks about the money. Every year, that's £3.6 billion thrown away because he won't make them pay their taxes here. How many extra doctors could Britain afford with that money?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that he brought up doctors, because last week we delivered record increases in funding for the NHS. Not just more doctors, but more nurses, more scans, more operations. That shows our commitment to prioritise the NHS. Not my words, the words of the NHS Chief Executive.
Scrapping the non-dom status would allow us to train 15,000 doctors every year. That's what Labour would do. And we can carry on handing out tax breaks to the super rich. Or we can live in a society where people don't have to go private to get a doctor's appointment. It's that simple. He also hands Shell 90p for every £1 they spend drilling. So they haven't paid a penny in windfall tax. Mr. Speaker, you may have seen this week that somebody shredded £10,000 in protest at those propping up an oil and gas giant. But he shreds £10,000 every other minute propping them up. Which does he think is the more absurd?
Mr. Speaker, this is the government that has actually put in place an economic plan that will deliver confidence and stability to our economy. And all I've heard from the Honourable Gentleman today, there's no answers, there's no substance, because there's no plan, Mr. Speaker. He talks about the NHS, we're delivering record funding for the NHS, but we can only do that on the foundations of a strong economy. You can't deliver for the NHS unless you have a plan for the economy, and he doesn't have either, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, every time he opens his mouth, another powerful business voice says he hasn't got a plan on growth. The failure of the last 12 years and the chaos of the last 12 weeks are compounded by the decisions he's taking now. He won't follow Labour's plan to scrap non-dom status. Instead, we've got an NHS staffing crisis. He won't follow Labour's plan to make oil and gas giants pay their fair share. Instead, he hammers working people. And he won't push through planning reform. Instead, he kills off the dream of home ownership. Too weak to take on his party, too weak to take on vested interest. 12 long years of Tory government, 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors. Why do they always clobber working people?
Mr. Speaker, he talks about leadership. This summer, I stood on my principles and told the country what they needed to hear. even though it was difficult. When he ran for leader, he told his party what they wanted to hear. And even now, he says one thing and he does the other. He says he cares for working people, but he won't stand up to the unions. He said he'd honour Brexit, but he tried to have a second referendum. And now he tries to talk tough about immigration, but he promised to defend free movement. You can trust him. You can trust him to deliver for his party. You can trust me to deliver for the country.